Good evening. Over the years, Silverstone has come to be one of the most legendary racing circuits in all of motorsport. You know its story, of course, opened in 1948, hosted the first ever race of the Formula One World Championship. But let me tell you that Silverstone as a race circuit has a whole lot more that you might be surprised to learn about. Back in the day, before regulations on testing and in-season testing within the world of door-to-door racing, not even Formula One here, drivers used to actually sneak around the perimeter roads of the race circuit so that they could get a couple of practice laps in. They'd jump into the sideways lane and sneak out between one of the barriers, which is pretty fascinating when you think about the lengths drivers would go to get an advantage. And because the original runways were actually made of concrete slabs, when the track first opened and was hosting British saloon car racing, the tyres would churn up in such a way that they would be destroyed in a matter of minutes if the cars weren't set up correctly. And one other little statistic you might not be aware of is that one of the corners back in the days, in its original layout, used to have a public road running through it. That meant the marshals would have to make sure that if there was any racing going on, it wouldn't coincide with heavy traffic density. Of course, in modern safety standards, that is unthinkable. And tonight, the drivers don't have to worry about any pedestrians because they're going flat out for 2 hours here for round 10 of ACC Race Nation's GT3 Challenge Series. I'm Jack Millington. I've got a cup of tea ready for this one tonight, and I'm really excited to see how the drivers will navigate around, as I've already said, a storied race circuit built to a capacity to host 164,000. Of course, we're not going to have 164,000 people watching tonight's stream, but I guarantee by the end of it we'll have 164,000 excuses from the drivers as to why they didn't win. But in any case, we've got a lot of action tonight. We're already part of the way through qualifying, and it's a welcome return to the series for Howard Dunn in the AMR V8. We're following him in the British car that is Aston Martin. We thought it was a good idea to start off with Howard. Hello to everybody in the comments area. Good to see you, Jacob. Hope you're doing all right. He's actually visiting Silverstone in real life this weekend. Hope you have a wonderful event there, Jacob. Let us know what you're going to watch, actually. I'm curious to know what championships you're following, or if you're just going for a race day for the weekend. Whatever it might be, I hope you have a great time. But 3.6 miles this circuit, 18 corners, one of the few racetracks in the world that still retains the corner names as opposed to numbers that have overcome a lot of race circuits nowadays. Let's go into the garage. Let's have a look at the drivers' standings in qualifying. The provisional qualifying, we've got Dan Hatton again on pole position, the number 55. He is not going to be struggling this evening. He has no ballast to worry about after finishing in 5th place last week. So he is absolutely on a mission. He is nearly 7/10 of a second clear of Mark Chapman. It's Jeffrey Van Buren in third place with Steve Hall in the pits after what was, has to be said, a long overdue podium for the Ferrari man. Really great to see him back in the top three again. Hartle Toby returns to the championship. We haven't seen him for a few races, but he's back for double points tonight. Howard Dunn, as I already mentioned, he's 7th. Dennis Penders is in 8th. Then we've got Bence Biro and Mark Laszlo inside the top 10. Ross Harris is 11th. Looks like he's changed his colour scheme a little bit there on the McLaren. Yes, he has. He's got a much more, I would call that almost like an off-piste grey almost with yellow and blue. But it's definitely eye-catching. Reminds me of the old Lola colours from the early 90s. They used to run a similar scheme to that. They've inverted it now for Formula E. Matt Phillips is facing the wrong way, but he's 12th in the qualifying. Davies Attenborough is 13th. His brother is not racing tonight. He's away. Hello, Danny, if you are watching. Davies just been moved down to 14th place as Stuart Packham puts himself into 5th position, and Danny Felix on a strong run of form at the minute as Danny's in 9th for that qualifying effort. Joe Warner is 16th. Mikey yet to set a lap time in 17th. He doesn't have Jordan Harding alongside him in the headset chat this evening. It might actually do him a favour because Jordan will talk his ear off like I do when I'm in commentary. Liam Watkinson is 18th, and then of course we've got the Mr. G-Man himself, of course, and that is the driver who is right on your screens there in the pits, the number 83. That's Gas Monkey, who will be serving a qualifying ban, I believe, after his, let's call it, fruitful endeavour into the back of Joe Warner last week at Misano. So that is a qualifying ban. He owned up to it straight away, so you've got to give him credit for that. Chappers has got closer to Dan whilst we've been talking. He's less than half a second away from provisional polls. We'll have to see how Chappers can respond, but the AMR V8 looking pretty tidy around here. Howard Dunn inside the top 10 as well, which is a strong sign. See if they can get that car working together in sync. Now, just to give you a bit of an update before I go on board with somebody for a qualifying lap, Stuart Packham won last week at Misano, and obviously he will be carrying the maximum ballast, so he's got 30 kilos in that number 78 machine, so he'll have that much. Jordan Harding finished second, but Jordan is no longer competing in the championship. He's being healthy, so he's going off and doing some running, so good on him for staying active despite the peer pressure from everybody in ACC Race Nation for him to stay. But sadly there won't be any more Jordan for the rest of the championship, which is a great shame because he had a great chance at winning this season. And then Steve Hall, as I mentioned earlier, with that first podium in, so long, since season 10, he will be carrying the 15 kilos of ballast, but he's carrying it slightly better than Packham at the minute. He's in 4th place, and Mark Laszlo's put a good effort in to go 6th, 1.175 off pole. But I've got to say, Dan Hatton is probably the car and driver combination to beat this evening. The Mustang is really well suited to this circuit. It will fly around here, and with no ballast for the first time for Dan since round 7, I think, realistically, he's going to get a chance to actually put his foot down and not have to worry about the consequences of carrying a lot of weight aboard that Mustang. So let's have a go. Let's go around the field and see who could be going onto a lap. I think it's going to be Howard Dunn, actually, we're going to follow. So there we go, in 9th place at the minute. The AMR V8 driver will be taking us around this brilliant racetrack, and I'm really excited to see what he can do for his first event back since, I think, round 6, actually, after the 2-hour event that we had at round 5. I think he was back for round 6, and that was it. So not been here for the last few weeks. He's been away, and now he is back. So let's get on board with him as he comes around the final corner here to start our lap of Silverstone. So towards turn number 1 then we go. as we flick into the right-handed corner at Abbey, down to 4th gear for the AMR driver. Completely flat, this left-hander. You've got to just be careful on the curves. You can see the way that the car was bounced over that as he tries to get himself braking down into Village at the right-hander. Then into the loop, which is the next left-hander. Sharp left-handed corner. Can be long in these GT3 cars to get around. And then he's off the road completely at Aintree. So yeah, I think he actually ended up in Liverpool on the exit of that corner. Then it was literally taking it to heart. I don't know if Howard is actually on a flying lap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find... Have we got Jacob Byford-Rue on a lap? I think we do, actually. There he is in the R8. So let's follow Jacob then into the right-hander once again. Abbey a little bit wide for Jacob there, but he's just about gathered it all up. 4th gear into 5th. And he's got to spot his brake zone on the left-hand side. Down through the gears into 1st at Village. 2nd gear, just keeping the car nice and steady through that corner. And same again through the left-hander of the loop. And then into Aintree. So we rejoin where we were up to earlier with Howard Dunn. And then we go down the Wellington Straight, of course named after the old Wellington Air Complex that was used during World War II. Into the left-hander at Brooklands, one of the famous long left corners that have been part of this circuit for over 50 years. And then into Luffield, another sweeping right-handed corner. You've got to be patient with the throttle, otherwise you can fire off into the gravel trap, but that was nicely done from the Audi driver. Woodcote, not really a corner nowadays, considering the chicane isn't there anymore, but it's still a challenge in the wet weather conditions because of visibility. Into Copse, one of the most famous corners in the circuit, and Byford-Rue is going to have to back out of that one. I think that was unfortunate for him. Let's see if we can skip along to the number 73 of Matt Phillips. So the Canadian now takes us over towards Maggots and Beckett's, one of the most famous complex of corners in all of motor racing. Into the left-hander and then the right once more. Can Phillips get that car lined up and on the power early? He can. It's so critical to get on the power before you get into Chapel and down the Hanger Straight. You've got time to think about your braking zone going into Stowe at the right-hander, which Matt needs to just spot his braking zone really and get the car tight to the apex, which he just about misses out on, I've got to say, but his time is still improving. So Matt's going to get into below the 2-minute mark. Then into the final couple of corners at effectively Vale and Club. Over those little curbs we go there with the McLaren. This is going to be 4/10 faster out of the final corner, according to the Delta. And there we go over the start-finish line effectively for the lap. Now I've taken us on a lap on board of the current layout. But what you've got to remember is that whilst this is the official layout nowadays, the actual start-finish line is back at Copse Corner. So we're going to continue on with Matt as he goes through this lap, because I'm curious to see the lines he takes out of some of these corners. So he's just got a couple of turns remaining down the Wellington Straight into Brooklands and then Luffield and Woodcote to go. So through the left-hander, then through the long right-hander. And he just understeers a bit wide. You saw he put the power on a little bit too early and he's lost that advantage that he had. It's going to be very tight if he improves on his lap time. He does not, sadly. And Matt will have to go back around the circuit again, maybe just get the car in the right balance, because he's only got 2 minutes 5 to go and there's not enough time left to go back to the pits and make any setup changes on that McLaren, so he's just going to have to try and stick along with it. But that can be a bit confusing for you all, but I thought it was pertinent to try and mention that the start finish line and the lap counter is not in the same place. So yeah, a little bit awkward for people to try and remember, but just so you're aware of it, that is that there. Now I will be referring to the corner names, but I'll also probably use the numbers as well for the race circuit. So we'll see how that goes as we go through this session. But Dan Hatton's still leading the way in qualifying by half a second, so he's pushed that advantage further out of everybody's reach as Chappers goes sliding through the right-hander there, or rather through the left-hander, I should say, at Brooklands. But less than a minute to go, and Chappers is going to have time to do one more lap. Hello to Danny, hope you're doing all right, bud. Good qualifying for you so far in 10th place. That is nice to see you up there. I did sound a little bit like Bruce Forsyth then, I won't lie. It was almost like nice to see you nice. Van Buren in 3rd place and in the pits after whatever happened there. It seemed like he'd stopped on the Wellington straight. Hartle-Toby, the last driver within a second of pole. I mean, Hatton's time is ferociously fast here, isn't it, everybody? I mean, to have a half a second advantage is quite sizable, but what he will need to ensure that he does is get a good start. That'll be critical for the whole of his race. If he doesn't do that and Chapman gets in front, that will impact him as we go along. But the timer has ticked over. We are done for qualifying. In terms of the official lap counter, we now wait for the drivers to exit on those final laps. So Dennis Penders, he'll be the first one to see the checkered flag. Everybody else behind him pretty much in the pits. And Penders doesn't improve on that lap. What about Byford Rue? We saw him going well before. He doesn't improve either. I think that is Hartle-Toby going into the pits. So I'm going to cut to Stuart Packham, the championship leader. And he does improve, and that gets him in front of the German to go on the 2nd row of the grid. So good lap time that for Stuart. That'll just keep him in the mix when it all kicks off later. Joe Warner will be the next driver to come across the start-finish line, and Liam Watkinson out there as well. So Joe in the number 75, the big Mercedes, doesn't have any teammates really to try and lean on for some support in that car. But as the Mercedes comes towards the start-finish line, what's his lap time? Doesn't improve, but he is in front of Mikey Keating though for 16th place, and Joe sliding the car around for the cameras. I'm sure his sponsors will be delighted with that. Liam Watkinson, he's just rounding Luffield now and looking to just get a time on the board. Can he put himself in front of his sparring partners in the back quarter of the group? Yes, he puts himself right in the mix. So Dan Hatton takes another pole position this season. Him and that Mustang are united in ways that no one expected. On a 158.2, he's half a second clear of Mark Chapman on the front row of the grid. Jeffrey Van Buren is on the 2nd row with Stuart Packham, the championship leader, in 4th. Hartle-Toby is in 5th place with Howard Dunn in 6th. On row 4, you've got Steve Hall and Mark Laszlo with a good qualifying for Mark that in 8th place, just like his numbers' sake. Dennis Penders and Danny Felix round out the top 10, with Bence Biro the only driver remaining within 2 seconds of provisional pole. Ross Harris is 12th, just in front of Matt Phillips by less than 300ths of a second, with Davies out and by a 10th and a half back. Davey qualifying a little bit lower than what we would typically expect him to do, but wait to see how the Nissan navigates this track. Byford Rue and Liam Watkinson are on row number 7 with Joe Warner and Mikey Keating on row number 8, and of course Gas Monkey serving that qualifying ban. He's on row 9 in the number 83. But I think for Gas Monkey today, his goal really is to get some knowledge under his belt of how to drive that car for a 2-hour race. And of course, for tonight, double points on offer as well. So this is quite critical for the championship at this point. This is where the drivers will start to be looking at who's around them and who they can try and take advantage of, whether they're not in the race, they've missed an event, or whether they can get into the championship fight directly. We'll talk all about that in just a moment's time. I'm going to have a quick breather, and then when there's about 30 seconds to go, we will go into the race session itself for 2 hours.
30 seconds. 20 seconds.
So here we go then. 2 hours of Silverstone coming up for the GT3 Challenge Series drivers to try and navigate. Who will come out on top, we'll have to wait and see. But this circuit will promote a lot of overtaking and opportunities for drivers to make some riskier moves than what they were used to at Misano from last week. So that it's going to be an exciting event. 19 drivers participating this evening, and who will be the most consistent, because we've seen it before with this championship. Drivers can be incredibly quick, but it can all go wrong in the blink of an eye. Take round 5 back at Spa-Francorchamps. Those that were here, you'll remember, of course, Will Fielden in the M4 GT3 led for an hour and 40 minutes and then spun off comfortably whilst leading the race, and he lost the race victory in the end. More drama followed after that because Stuart Packham then took the lead from him, and he spun out of the lead with less than 5 minutes to go, which gave Dan Hatton another race victory after not appearing to have a chance at getting a victory. Anything can happen in the course of 2 hours. Anything can happen at the pit stops that can cause issues as well. So if you are watching live, do put some comments in. Keep me company over the course of this 2 hours. I've just finished my cup of tea off, so I'm running off water for the rest of the session. So that's going to be a fruitful endeavour, shall we call it. I haven't got any biscuits, but never mind. Don't feel sorry for me, I sign up to do this. Now, in terms of the drivers' standings, let's go through those, because some of you will be really keen to know what the score is now that we're here for round 10. Let me just go through that before we do. Let's get the race director into position for our pole sitter as they make their way towards Vale and Club. So Stuart Packham leads the championship. He's on 201 points in the Huracan. He is 6 points clear of Dan Hatton, who's on 195 points. Jordan Harding is third, but sadly for Jordan, that is it for his championship this season. So he won't be improving on that unless something drastic happens. Will Fielden is fourth on 180 points. We haven't seen Will since round 7, unfortunately. But if he does come back, he'll be one to watch. Fifth place is Mark Chapman on 175 points. The reigning champion, of course, is Mark. Dennis Penders is sixth on 165, with Bence Biro, the Hungarian, on 151 points. Davy Zoutenbayer and Jeffrey Van Buren are on the same points, tied on 144, the two Dutchmen, and Simon Whiting is in 10th place on 129. However, tonight, Matt Phillips, Hartle Toby, Howard Dunn, Jacob Byford-Root, even Mikey Keaton, they could all, technically, if things go very well, sneak themselves into the top 10. So we'll have to wait and see. But if you are watching, do comment who your thoughts, what your thoughts and feelings are in terms of who is going to win this race tonight and who you might pick for the championship as well. We'll have to go through all of your comments in a few minutes' time. And we are just coming up to the last two corners of the race circuit here at Silverstone for round number 10. Just 5 races to go after this one. Double points, remember, as well on offer tonight. And the race for the championship, realistically, after tonight starts in earnest. So Dan Hatton leading them towards Copse Corner, the original turn 1 of this race circuit. Mark Chapman on the right hand side of your screen. Can he throw a cat amongst the pigeons to upset the pole sitter? 2 hours of racing in front of us here at Silverstone Race Circuit.
Green
And the race is live here in Great Britain. It's a good start for Dan Hatton, and he's going to lead into turn 1. That's exactly the start he would have wanted. And the number 55 pulls away. Van Buren looking to put pressure on Chapman in the background there for second place. Looks like Hartle Toby's had a great start, and he's got himself in front of Packham, who's over the grass and into the tarmac part of Maggots and Beckett's. He's got to find a way to navigate back through, but he's going to end up behind Steve Hall, I think, by the seams of it. So a nightmare for Packham. Looks like he had a bit of contact going through that corner. Dennis Penders is there as well. Then there's a bit of a gap backwards. So Gas Monkey is in... Well, we don't actually know where Gas Monkey is. Ignore that timing tower, because that is not quite right for whatever reason. So Dan Hatton definitely leads the way at the moment as the timing tower cycles itself through. Mark Chapman second, then it's Van Buren, then it's Toby, then it's Dunn. Good start for Howard. He's up to 5th, as is Mark Laszlo. Those two have had a really good launch. Danny Felix is 7th, Hall in 8th, Packham in 9th, as I mentioned earlier, not having the best of starts, and Dennis Penders inside the top 10. Ross Harris was in 11th place, but I don't think he is anymore because Jacob Byford-Rue's there. 007 has had a good launch in that Audi, and that looks like that's Danny Felix defending from Packham, but he gets that a bit wrong, and in fact I think he's going to drop from 7th to 9th if he's not careful here at the loop. Penders on his inside, and Penders does go through. That looks like there is Mark Laszlo who's having some internet issues there. I think that's what Danny was trying to avoid. Something was going on there with the number 8. Of course, Mark had issues not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago, which we were robbed of, and then we had him using a controller last week at Misano, so he's not really had a run of luck at all, has he, in that McLaren? But that's the view for Dan Hatton in front of us. Absolutely nobody. He's had a good start. It's a good first lap of the race. He's faster than anybody, of course, because he was over the timing line first, and he's just under a second ahead of Mark Chapman. Steve Hall running in 6th place. Track limits will be critical round here as well, everybody, because let's not forget, there are lots of places where you can run wide and cut corners here, so the drivers are going to have to be wary of any excursions and making sure they're not too frequent. Bence Biro's in the pits. I thought something had happened to Bence at the start because him and Matt Phillips went backwards. Not quite sure what's gone on. That is a car round, and that's Hartle Toby who has gone round, and Mikey Keaton spun as well. But we've got Hartle Toby who had a good start to this race. Has dropped all the way down to 16th, and is that Audi gone around by the looks of it? I think he's lost it out of maybe the exit of Beckett's, maybe Chapel. We'll have to have a little look at that. There's a good fight going on here for 11th place, and Davey Zoutenbayer is in the top 10, so he's doing his thing again, is Davey, where he just quietly picks his way through the field, which I think he deserves to do. Is that Gas Monkey round? I think it is at Club Corner, and Hartle Toby's round as well. Let me just cut to Hartle Toby. Is he having some form of issue? No, he's facing the wrong way. What a peculiar place to have gone off the road. I wonder if there's any damage on that Audi. We'll have to see. But I've said it a number of times about Hartle Toby this season with that Audi. That car just looks like it bounces everywhere for whatever reason. It will come good for him. He will get a race win in that car. Just hasn't happened yet for various reasons. But Liam Watkinson having a good fight here with Ross Harris and Byford-Rue for 11th place. Bence is still in the pit, so clearly some massive drama on the opening lap for the Hungarian, which is a great shame. Davey Zoutenbayer in the Dayglow yellow Nissan. Oh, and Bence picks up a stop and go penalty. Oh, that just ruins your evening, really, to be honest with you, for Bence. He's not going to be too thrilled about how it's gone so far. Matt Phillips is in 15th. Now, he's got damage to the back of that car, so we'll have to have a look at what happened to him. There's a couple of incidents we want to look at on lap 1, and of course what happened to Hartle Toby as well on lap 2. Where's Matt Phillips going on? And that's going to be him sliding round. Whereabouts is he on? He's trying to get out of the way. Now he's trying to fire the car up. The Canadian taking to a little bit of lawnmowering in his spare time there, but Hartletoby's going to get past him. See the way that the R8 bounced over the tarmac there on the exit of Chapel. That's a very stiff setup on that car. Oh, Harris has made a little bit of a mistake, and Watkinson goes through. So good pressure from the Porsche. Puts himself into 12th position. That was very wide, though. That'll be a track limits incursion, I'm sure. And Danny Felix just hanging on to the back of Dennis Penders at the minute. And Mark Laszlo under pressure from the multiple champ. And Mark's had a good start to this race. And what's going to happen now is Packham is trying to get back up to, well, Howard Dunn realistically I think is going to be the main target, and then try and push on from there. Howard Dunn again also having a very quietly effective opening 5 minutes. We are of course only on lap 3, so there's still a long way to go in this event. But Dan Hatton will go on to the 3rd lap and goes into Cops Corner. Quite a comfortable lead as well, as we look on board from the rear spoiler of the McLaren. And Packham just waiting in the wings, trying to find out where Laszlo is strong and where he's perhaps weaker. Of course, for Mark, you know, I said it before, we were robbed of his performance 2 weeks ago when he disconnected and he had those wheel issues. Best result this season is 8th all the way back at round number 3, which, if memory serves me well, that's actually at Paul Ricard. Oh, bit of a twitch. Or is that a twitch, or is that an internet issue that he's still lagging a little bit? Looks more like the latter, doesn't it? That's pretty catastrophic, actually. So, oh, as Packham has a big slide coming out of the corner there. That's not something you really want to be fighting with. Van Buren very close to the back of Mark Chapman as well whilst we're talking. And Zoutenbayer is also waiting in the wings of Danny Felix. But Hatton's 2 seconds clear of Chappers, who's got a lot of pressure coming from the Dutchman behind in the form of Van Buren. Looking for his first podium this season is Jeffrey. He scored plenty of them in season 11. It's just whether he can manage to do it this time. Of course, he's had a car change in that time. Don't forget as well, Van Buren won his first race last season. A couple of podiums and loads of top 5s to go alongside it. Hasn't had one in the championship of season 12 yet. But 2 Aston Martins in the top 4. We've not seen that this season. Just shows you the strength of that car at its home circuit. Of course, the Aston Martin GT3 build is actually not too far away from Silverstone at all. So it is effectively the official home Grand Prix for that car. But Steve Hall is doing a solid job. In fact, Mark Laszlo's actually caught up to the back of Steve Hall, to give him credit where it's due for Mark. He might be struggling with his internet connection, but there's definitely no disputing the connection of his speed with the tarmac. He's pulled a gap on Stuart Packham, to be fair. So, really nice performance that from the number 8. But we also have to remember that Packham is carrying that ballast. That's not going to be easy for him. And Felix running in 8th place. Davies out and by in 9th. And then it's Jacob Byford-Rue leading this trio. Oh, Ross Harris has a wiggle coming through the right-hander at Stowe. And that is a move completed for Dennis Penders, who we didn't see but has had a moment out on track, because he was running comfortably in the top 10. So we're going to cut back to the replay. And we're going to have a look at what happened with Bence Biro to start off with. And then we'll also have a look at what happened to Hartletoby. So, the number 96 was already in the pits, of course, by that point. Apologies again for anybody who has any form of epilepsy. That's a big spin, actually. But he was already distanced from the... Oh, and he's been hit. That would explain it very, very comfortably. I think he's been hit by by Matt Phillips, I think. Let's just have a look if we can go back to Matt. There we go, number 73. Going into Copse Corner at turn 1 and bang, straight into the back. Oh, and then there's a second... Oh, and Mikey Keaton got caught up in that incident as well. So that would explain why Mikey fell back at the start. And that's really unfortunate for Mikey. He was an absolute innocent victim in all of that. And then a little bit later, I think Bence has that spin as well. So he's getting back up to speed. He's not far away from the pack. He's had a bit of a knock in the back and the side. Comes into the right-hander. Phillips right in front of us. And he's just lost it. And he's going to go on the grass, and that's going to spit him right the way around. And it does a full 540, so not even a 360. That's a bit frustrating for him. So that's a shame. So then what we'll do is we'll cut then over to Hartle Toby, who was doing a good job and then goes off the road. So we come into Copse Corner. No issues there. And as I alluded to earlier, I think this happened during somewhere from this point onwards all the way through to Chapel. Nice and solid. No issues there. Through the right-hander. Oh, and that's just going to be going on the grass, and then it just spits him out, and round he goes. I think he's going to be really angry at that. He does do a full 720, but I think he's going to be really angry at that, because that looked like an avoidable one, to be fair. And then we'll have a little look at what happens to Dennis Penders. So he's with Stuart Packham, and then all of a sudden he isn't. So what happens to Dennis as Liam Watkinson goes for a spin? I do again apologise to anybody who's got epilepsy. There's no easy way of scrolling this back. So he's gone off at Maggots and Beckett. This looks like a big one. So into the left-hander, then the right. Over the curb. And it just... Oh, and that's it. It just unsettles the car. Big spin. He's lucky. He's fortunate not to hit the barrier, actually, with that one. And then that's where he loses the time and he just has to get on back onto the race circuit, which he does. And he's got a bit of a tarmac to jump onto there, so he joins the back of that group. So let's have a look at where we are then after watching those couple of issues earlier on in the race. Let's just get back to the garage. So Hatton still leads the way. Chappers is in second with Van Buren in third. Howard Dunn is fourth, and Steve Hall has fallen down to seventh. So we'll wait and find... We'll have a look back for the replay with that in a minute. Davies Outtenby has got past Danny Felix for 8th position. And Dennis Penders is in the top 10. He's just got a little bit of a gap to Byford Rue. Then it's Harris. Then it's Watkinson. Then Hartle Toby continuing on his recovery drive. Phillips is 15th. Gas Monkey's 16th. Joe Warner... He's not a lap down. I'm not sure why. Oh, he's not flicked over the timing beam yet. That's why it's saying he's a lap down. And then Mikey Keating is in 18th place too. Bence Biro, of course, he is a lap down. So he's circulating and he's just acquiring points, which is crucial for him. So Steve Hall will very quickly, as he puts the pressure back onto Packham, we're going to very quickly have a look at what happened to him. So this is going to be on lap 5, I think, for him. I know I keep using the replay camera, but we've got to have a look at what's gone on. So we want the Ferrari. There we go. He's behind Howard Dunn. He's behind Howard Dunn, and then on the next lap, we don't know where he is. This is not what we wanted in the slightest. So by that point, he is already behind Packham. So we've got to find out where that's gone wrong. I do apologise what happened. I don't think we're going to get to that. So I want to go back to the race next. So something's happened to Steve. We can ascertain that has gone on. But he is now the driver putting the pressure on Packham at the minute. This is proving to be an opening quarter of an hour that has been action-packed. Lots of different things going on. And speaking of different things, Jeffrey Van Buren has overtaken Mark Chapman for second place. So that's just happened in the last few moments whilst we were trying to cycle through the replay. Thank you very much, ACC, for your great efforts with that. Van Buren moves into second position, but he's 6 seconds now behind the race leader, who will be delighted with his performance so far. Well, Dan. Don't forget, Dan Hatton's 6 points behind in the drivers' standings at the minute. And the number 55 will be drawing level. Actually, correction, because it's double points, he'll be moving into the lead of the championship, going into the last 5 races of the season when we return in May at Suzuka. It's a very particular favourite of mine. I really do enjoy Suzuka. Not as much as Silverstone, but obviously because Silverstone is a beautiful racetrack to drive around. But Penda's in 10th position, and he's now in the midst of his recovery drive, whether he can get up to Danny Felix, who's doing a really solid job at the minute. But Howard Dunn now coming under pressure from Mark Laszlo, who's absolutely flying. I think his fastest lap then was quicker than everybody in front of him, bar Dan Hatton. Now, I'm not going to get too excited about this. I'm not going to say anything about the prospects of Mark Laszlo, because commentators' curse is, unfortunately, in this championship, quite a real thing with me, so I don't want to say too much. But this was the drive that we were robbed of 2 weeks ago when Mark was putting in a really good shift and then his wheel decided it didn't want to be a wheel anymore, preferred to be a toaster. Well, let's get on board with him as the group starts to spread out a little bit. You can see he's got the bit between his teeth. The car is moving around quite a lot in the braking zones. And look at that, Laszlo just throwing a shape into the left-hander there with that chicane. And then coming out of the final corner and going onto the main straight. I say the main straight, but the official start-finish straight of the new circuit. We're of course using the old layouts for GT racing, where Copse is turn 1. Into Abbey and Farm. Laszlo so strong on the brakes here. Really, really strong into this right-hander. Then into the loop. He's got a really good line. He just turned in a little too early then, and I think that's compromised his line. Because I think he would have been on the back of him and potentially looking at a move into Brooklands. He is close, but he's not going to be close enough to make a lunge, I don't think, at the next left-hander. Again, throws that shape, which is putting Dunn all over the place. And this is good pressure being applied by the McLaren man. South Africa trying to defend against the number 8. Mark has never told me what nationality he is, so I actually... Whoa, look at that! Closing speed between the McLaren and the AMR there, wow! That was ferocious from the number 8. In fact, he kind of compromised his own line a little bit through there, did Mark. Seems to be just a little bit of a visual glitch going on in front of us, but it shouldn't affect the drivers too much, I can't imagine. Liam Watkins has gone off the road at Brooklands, which is certainly less than ideal. But this is a good fight. This is a good psychological fight. I think Joe Warner now has just gone off at Club Corner. I don't know if he's got damage, but if he's spun to the inside of the track, he certainly will have. Race leader passes him with no issues whatsoever. And Steve Hall's got in front of Stuart Packham whilst we've been talking, and let's just yeah, Joe Warner did crash into the wall, unfortunately. So yeah, there's confirmation that Steve Hall has overtaken Stuart Packham for 6th place. So that is another position lost for Stuart, but there's a long way to go. He's 6 seconds clear of Davy Zoutenbayer at the minute, so he doesn't have to worry about that too much at the minute. Dan Hatton, there he is, race leader. We probably won't see him too much in this race. He is still there, but he's comfortably driving away from Van Buren, who himself, Van Buren, is actually pulling away from Chapman. So that 187 Ferrari's got some speed, but it's just not quite at the same level as the race leader at the minute. Yellow flag up ahead for Mikey, who's spun in Maggots and Beckett's. And is that Laszlo? Has Laszlo got in front of Howard Dunn there? He has. It hasn't updated on the timing towers, but it has happened. Mark Laszlo has moved into 4th place, despite what the game believes. We're having all sorts of drivers going. I think that's Jacob Byford-Rue now, who's gone off at Brooklands. A lot of people are struggling with the braking zone there at that corner. But I know that it says Laszlo 5th, but Howard Dunn 4th. But that is confirmation right there, everybody. Visually, that the blue McLaren has moved into 4th place. So we're going to go to a replay, and we're going to have a look at the action between the two fights. So we skip along. We will try and find the car that we're after. We'll start with Steve. Let's just have a look. Packham was comfortably clear, makes a little mistake going into the right-hander of Stowe. And then I think, is he going to just get the line wrong coming out of Vale and Club? No, he's still in front there. A little wobble through Abbey, but no real drive. Oh, and then he takes a very peculiar line, actually, does Packham. And is this the chance for Hall? He's harrying the back of the Lamborghini, and then there's the mistake from Packham. Hits the curb on the inside of the loop, side by side, and that's just a really tidy overtake for the number 5. And to be fair to Packham, comes back at him, but doesn't have enough. And then we go to Laszlo trying to find a way past Dunn. And he's just all over the back of the AMR. Little slide through Copse Corner. The race director just skips along very merrily. Still haven't found where that overtake is. So there's Dunn. He's gone wide at Abbey for a start. Almost loses the back end of it, which costs him a lot of momentum. Then defends to the inside at the next right-hander, and then I think he's just going to overshoot the braking zone, which he does. That allows an outside, then the opportunity to run alongside the Aston. Bit of a glitch, but thanks to the wide line he took, he gets a good exit as Laszlo and gets a good amount of momentum. Dunn's going to defend this going into Brooklands, and then to the right-hand side at the outside line, he's going to try to look there, but then Dunn just misses his braking zone, and that's how Mark Laszlo got through. And there you go. It's as simple and as straightforward as that. Little mistakes are going to cost drivers tonight, and that was evidence of one there. As the timing tower is really starting to get confused with where everybody is at the minute. It's saying Mark Chapman leads the race, and Howard Dunn is in 3rd. It's now saying Mark Chapman is 8th. So we can't actually rely on that realistically. We're going to have to look at this one. So Hatton still leads. He's 8.5 seconds in front of Mark Chapman, who's 1.6 behind the Dutchman. Then it's Mark Laszlo in 4th, who's now a second ahead of Howard Dunn. Steve Hall is putting a little bit of a gap to Stuart Packham in 7th place. And then Davies Altenbayer is as far away from Packham as he has been through the last few laps. They've kept that gap relatively similar. Danny Felix is doing a good job in 9th, with Dennis Penders in 10th. Then it's Ross Harris under pressure from Hartle Toby. And that looks to me like the closest fight on track at the minute after 24 minutes of action. So let's go over to the fight there between Ross Harris and Hartle Toby. On board with the defender, trying to hold on to that position. He runs a little bit deep into Brooklands. I wonder if Ross is enjoying the championship this season, because I've mentioned it so many times before about the bad luck that he had when he used to drive the Lamborghini, but now he's in the McLaren. It doesn't seem that he's having as many problems until that moment when we decided to cut to him and went off the road, and unfortunately commentator's curse literally struck him as Hartletoby snuck through. So up to 11th place goes the R8 and fires off into the sunset. But the key for as I was saying, the key for Ross moving through this race is getting the points and banking some more experience with that McLaren. He's had a much better run of it in recent times, and last two events he's finished in 9th and 12th place. So another 12th today, that would be a really good drive. He's 7 seconds clear of Matt Phillips in 13th, so he's doing a very, very fine effort at the minute. He's quite comfortably in front of Byford Rue and the gang. I always refer to them as the back quartet, because you've got Byford Rue, Liam Watkinson, Joe Warner, and Mikey Keating has retired. That is a great shame. We've lost Mikey from the race. He's the 4th member of the quartet, actually. So Mikey Keating, the first retirement of the race, was clearly having some struggles, was Mike, but that's a great shame. Might be Mikey's first retirement of the season, actually. I think he's been doing a really good job, but unfortunately tonight's not going to pay dividends for him. So first retirement for Mikey. And Davey's out and back. Oh, what's happened to Mark Laszlo whilst we've been watching this? Mark Laszlo was flying and he's no longer in 4th place. He was pulling away from Howard Dunn. So what has happened here? Get in front of Howard Dunn. Still in front of Howard Dunn despite the floating car. So it's happened on the previous lap. So will it happen during Maggots and Beckett's, I wonder? Nope, he's got through there. And he's perfectly okay going round the right-hander at Stowe. Doesn't light up the tyres on the Exeter Club. Steve Hall was very wide down on the Exeter Club. That'll be a oh, and there we go. He's just lit it up, I think. Yeah. Ah, that is so easy to do. We just have a quick look at that. So he's got on the power. It's just the merest of touches on the grass, and he tries to get the car spun round, and oh, it just goes from bad to worse. He just put a little bit too much throttle down, gets the car, goes back through the gears and gets going again. But that is a shame. Laszlo was doing a really good job up until that point. He still is doing a good job. As you can see, he's managed to pull away again from Davey Zoutenbayer, so he's not struggling for speed, is Mark, but probably thinking he could catch up to the leading trio for a first podium, but he's going to have to just temper his expectations a little bit, I think. For anybody who is watching and wondering at the moment, in terms of football, Bournemouth and Leeds are currently 0-0, and Burnley are getting beat by Manchester City 1-0, goal courtesy of Erling Haaland, just for those that are tuning in and out of watching this great action here at Silverstone alongside the football. If you're unable to pay the subscription for Sky or TNT, whatever it's on tonight. Of course, those two channels doing their deals that they like to do. But we're still following Mark Laszlo. This is the point of the race where it starts to just settle down a little bit. It's Byford Rue just gone off the... Whoa! Big snap of oversteer for Byford Rue. That would have been a huge accident if he hadn't gathered that all together. And Jacob slots down a place into 15th. Wow, that was really well held, but Liam's gone a little bit wide. And Byford Rue's going to go past him. So these two are going to have their day of days on the screen, aren't they? This is what they've been waiting for, to get a good amount of screen time. I mean, that was great car control from Byford Rue. How he's held that, I'm not quite sure. There's Gas Monkey doing a really good job in 16th place. He might be a lap down, but it doesn't really matter. For him, it's about gaining mileage, and that's the key for becoming a good GT3 driver. You have to start somewhere, and it's not necessarily on pole position. But Liam Watkinson, he'll be kicking himself after that, because that was one of the easiest overtakes he'll ever have to make, and he literally threw it away 300 metres down the road. But this is a good omen for these two, because they're in their own fight and they know each other. They take the mick out of each other quite a lot, actually. Do the smiling quartet. It might become the quintet. Where is Jacob Byford Rue? He's doing some lawn mowing over there, up in front of us as they go towards Woodcote. I don't think it's the right time of year to do it, but never mind. Across the start-finish line they go. Both of them in the 2-minute 5s there. That was because of the little battle as Liam slides the car through the corner. I was about to say that the quartet might become a quintet, because Gas Monkey might join them in that group before long. We haven't categorised Gas Monkey yet, but those four of Liam, Jacob, Mikey, Joe, those four have been battling all season long for the lower placings. But what is a great credit to them is that they show up every single week, they have a good time, they enjoy the racing, they enjoy the community, and they go out there and they're continuing to learn. You know, we've seen some good results from the four of them this season. I think that is crucial to the continuing development of the league. It just shows you how strong the ACC Race Nation is at the moment, where we are regularly getting into the 20s for a field of cars, for a game that is supposedly still struggling a little bit from what I've heard in terms of player base. I know that the most recent AC Evo update has done a world of good for the game. I've not had the opportunity to try it, but I have heard quite a lot of positives about it, and the player count seemingly improving on that game as well. But for now, the future of ACC Race Nation remains on ACC Assetto Corsa Competizione. I haven't heard anything to say otherwise. If anything does change, of course, we will let you know through the announcements page on Discord. If you haven't yet signed up, you can go onto Discord, go have a look for ACC Race Nation, or if you have a look at my YouTube streams from Jack 1053 Synopsis, there should be some links in there that you can use as well, and you can go through the team and they'll give you some support in getting into a race with the championship next week, as Liam Watkinson goes very wide on the exit of Copse Corner. Now this is an interesting fight. Danny Felix has done a really good job to get onto the rear spoiler of Davy Zauenbayer. Let's get on board with the McLaren. This is not a sentence I'd normally say, but Danny Felix is really looking stronger than Davy Zauenbayer at the minute. And I'm just wondering if the Nissan, maybe this isn't the Nissan circuit. I've talked about this previously about the Nissan. It's not a car that a lot of people drive, so there's not much data surrounding it. Davy's really the only driver I've ever known to have consistently been in that car in this championship. And that makes it quite hard to sort of gather a complete understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of that car. We know it's good at circuits like Paul Ricard, for example. We know it's very strong around there. But don't know much more than that. Maybe Silverstone, because of the high winds, maybe that affects that car a little bit more than the others. It is a little bit taller, it is a little bit boxier. Its aerodynamic package is good, but it's not as good as the McLaren were riding on board with the way it's quite squat and low to the ground. It's got a very low centre of gravity, has the McLaren as well, which helps. And this is a track where aerodynamics are quite key for good lap times around here. I think Ross Harris has gone off at Cops. Oh, Zoutenbayer just about tidied that all together at the chicane. He ran very deep, and then the car, as a result of the camber, just oversteered a little bit too much. And Zoutenbayer weaving the car. I wonder if his pressures are out of sync here a little bit. I've just seen him trying to almost warm the tyres up. I wonder if that's what's causing him some problems. But Felix within a second of Zoutenbayer currently. Rest of the field a little bit more spread out. Hartle-Toby, you think, might be the next battle with Dennis Penders, and that one could go on for quite a long time with Dennis, to be fair. We have lost another driver from the race. I'm just trying to calculate who it is. Now that's an early pit stop. Mark Laszlo's in the pits, the first driver to make a conventional pit stop here. So Mark Laszlo in the pits at the minute. We'll have to wait and see how this works out for him. I haven't got an update yet as to who the other driver is that's gone out. But back to Danny Felix. So these two fighting over what will be 7th place. I'm just trying to calculate who it is who's gone out as Gas Monkey gets right out of the way. That's Gas Monkey. I don't think he did a bad job there. He got right out of the way, did the Irish driver. Oh, Felix running a little bit deeper into the corner. This is a dashboard view from the 985. It doesn't look as comfortable as he would typically, to be fair, does Davey. There's something about the Nissan today that's just not suiting his needs. He's going to run a little bit wide at the right hander, which narrows his apex and his turning circle for the loop. But he's managed to pull away, and he's kind of stemming the threat from Felix at the minute. There's Joe in the big Mercedes. I haven't seen that car since John Wells drove it not so long ago. And technically that version, I think he was driving the... Oh, Joe, just keep it in a straight line. I think, as I was saying, John Wells was driving the previous iteration of that car. I could be mistaken. But Joe trying to handle this car, and he is struggling with it. He has said that on a number of occasions. This car, he does have a few tribulations with, but he's sticking with it, which is key for him. And there's still 5 races to go. He will secure a good result tonight because he's running in 16th place. It's got a long way for him to run. He's got Byford Rue and Watkinson coming up to put a lap on him. There's Hartle-Toby in 10th place. Now that gap nearly... Yes, now it's just under a second to the 103 in front of us. I'm just going to go back to the garage. Yeah, that's a bit of a strange one, what's happened with that. I know that we lost Mikey earlier, but for whatever particular reason I can't seem to fathom who it is that we've managed to lose from the race. Felix still quite close to Zoutenbayer, very close to Zoutenbayer, but Toby is also close with Dennis Penders. I'm just going to briefly cut back to the race replay. Is it Ross Harris we've lost? I think it might be. I can't see Ross Harris on the rostrum. I think that's who we've lost. Yeah, I think it's confirmed. So Liam Watkinson's in the pits, but I think we've lost, sadly, Ross Harris from this race. So that is a great shame. Ross was running just outside the top 10. That's promoted Matt Phillips to 11th place then. The Canadian has been in good form the last few races. And looking like at the minute he's just going to run quite a lonely race to the flag, which might be a bit frustrating for him and he might get a bit tired. This is when mistakes start to come in. But at the minute he is circulating really well. Now, this is the fight we're going to focus on. I know that Danny Felix and Davy Zoutenbayer are still fighting, as you can see on screen. But we are going to cut to Hartle Toby because his recovery drive now is looking quite strong. He's 20 seconds this pairing behind the next pair of battlers of Felix and Zoutenbayer, so that can still be closed over the remaining 78 minutes. But down through the gears goes the R8, and that car looking much more lively at this point in the race. The Ferrari looked a little bit hesitant to turn into the left-hander of Vale there. Into the right-hander at Abbey. And the left-hander now, which way does he go? He's got to try and pick a spot because Penders is blocking effectively. Down the inside he tries to go. Penders makes a late move just to stop the Audi from going through. I think that'll be the first mental check that Toby does in his mind to remember that one. Drivers have long memories when it comes to being slighted by other drivers. But nevertheless, Hartle Toby will be remembering that as he goes very late on the brakes into Brooklands. And then Luffield is next at the right-hander. Penders just running a little bit wide mid-corner, having suffered with some mid-corner understeer, and that's just again promoting these opportunities for Toby to close that gap and find a way past as they start the 21st lap of the race. Oh, a little bit, looked like the Ferrari just bounced over the curb a little bit too extremely there. To the left-hander, the right-hander of Maggots and Beckett's. And then down towards Stowe they go again. This time Toby, that is late from Toby. That's one of those moves that you do in MotoGP where it's effectively a block pass. And Penders having a little wobble on the exit of Stowe. Is he going to try again? He is going to try again. And he's actually scared Penders off the road. And can he do the undercut? Can he get underneath that car? He can't quite make it. So Toby resorting to some extreme offensive techniques to try and get past. Whoa, how close is he? Through the right-hander at Abbey there, into the left. And is Penders going to be wise to it this time? He is. He goes a little bit deeper into the corner than he would have wanted, and Toby's looking to that inside line. But I think Penders will start to be wise to Toby's attacks. That was brave work from the 208. Really brave stuff. Into the left-hander we go once again. Toby looking to that inside line. He's going to try and scare the Ferrari again, I think. But this is what Penders does. He starts to work out where people are able to attack him and tries to counter that. And he normally can do that quite effectively. Although that was very extreme. Here comes Toby again. Very strong on the brakes. The Audi's a very good car under the brakes. And he's practically pushing the 296 GT3 through the corners. Oh. He wasn't actually going to try and make that overtake, I know that for sure. To the right-hander. Out of Maggotts and Beckett on from Chapel onto the hanger straight again. He's got a good run this time. And Penders, I think, is going to have to go to the inside. Because he's on the middle of the road. Which way does Toby go? He gets to the inside line. On the brakes a little bit later. He does go through, but Penders is going to be there. On the inside, there's a little bit of contact, and sadly for Penders, he goes round. And that is a shame, because that was a really good fight. But Penders ends up going the wrong way round as a result of the contact. I don't think there was anything malicious in that. I think it was just two cars went for the same piece of tarmac, and that was that. So the Belgian ends up spinning around the wrong way. And Toby gets that position, so moves up to 9th place. So that pushes us back towards the fight with Davy Zattenbauer and Danny Felix for 7th. Come on, Danny. Not cheering you on. We want you to put a lot of pressure on Davy. That's what we want to see. And some nice battles like we've just seen with Hartle Toby and Dennis Penders. Now, back at the front, the drivers are in a little bit of a status quo here. Apart from Dan Hatton, everybody else is in a bit of a status quo, but Dan Hatton's just driving at the rate of knots he wants to. He's 16 seconds clear of Jeffrey Van Buren. The gap between himself and Mark Chapman have been practically the same throughout the race for the Triple One. That's not really changed in the last 10 to 15 minutes, and Van Buren's just got Joe Warner in front of him, so that might change that statistic. Howard Dunn's 4th, but he's not really under any big pressure from Steve Hull, but we are starting to move towards pit stop territory, and that is something that will have these 3 drivers, including Stuart Packham, just paying a little bit of attention, because that can change the order of this race for these 3. They will certainly be affected by it. Davy's out and by will be thinking about that as well, but knowing Davy, he'll probably go long. And Danny would have an extreme undercut on him, but then it'll work the opposite direction later on in the race. Hartle Toby is behind Byford Rue, so the Audi's just swapping places. There's Dennis Penders. Then it's Mark Glaslow on his own in 11th, but don't forget Mark made that early pit stop compared to everybody else. So he's probably on a new set of boots and trying to put his foot down. Well, he is the joker in the pack at the minute, is Mark, because we don't actually know, relatively speaking, what his race pace is going to be like later on in the race. He is on for an extreme undercut, but his tyres, if he doesn't make another pit stop, will be struggling later. Matt Phillips is there in 12th. And fuel is another matter as well for Mark. That's something that... Can the McLaren do an hour and 25 minutes on 1 tank of fuel? That's a big question for the drivers. They'll have to... They'll have to think about that. But Davy Zattenbauer has decided to prove me wrong. He's not going long. He must have heard me. He's decided to go short. And the Dayglow Yellow Nissan is in the pits. So that'll release Danny Felix, who can now try and unleash some speed in that McLaren, see what pure race pace he has. He's been bottled up behind a Nissan for the last few laps. Hartle Toby still 9th, Laszlo in 11th, as we've just been discussing. It's Matt Phillips in 12th, Byford in 13th. He's got a very stiff setup on that car. He just has Hartle Toby kicking up the dust in front of him. Gas Monkey is 14th, yet to make a pit stop, but still running really well. Liam Watkinson is 15th. Joe Warner is 16th, and I think Bent's Biro has got past him. So Bent's finally in front of another car. So that's 1 place gained. Just trying to see roughly where he is in relation to the cars in front of him. Steve Hull's very close actually to Howard Dunn. Oh, here we go. Let's get on board with the 296 GT3. That's a little bit too early from Steve. He was excited to get on the throttle pedal there and punched it a little bit too loudly. But at the minute it's positive progress for Steve. He's found some lap time to close that gap up to Howard Dunn, but the problem is that Packham is now joining him. On the Hanger Straight complex they go, for the 25th time of asking. So far so good though for this race in the battle for fourth. Oh, done a little bit deep into Vale, and he's compromised on the exit at Club, but Steve's line not the ideal one, I have to say. Season 8 champion looking to rebuild his season after all the issues he's had. A little bit of an awkward line that for Dunn, and that's just putting pressure on the AMR V8 drive. And I've got to say, this is something that Dunn was struggling with in his battle with Laszlo before at these couple of corners. It's a nice exit from Hall. Does seem like we've got a little bit of an issue with lag spiking going on at the minute, but Dunn is just about retaining fourth place. I think we're going to cut back to Stuart Packham here, because Packham will have the best view. Of course, the race director's gone the wrong way round, so we have to loop around every driver under the sun. Into the pits goes Steve Hull. So Steve recognising if he can't get past Dunn on track, he needs to do it elsewhere, and in the pits he'll be able to undercut the South African. So Dunn will carry on. We were right to cut over to Stuart Packham because he now takes up the chase. And whilst Packham tonight is struggling with outright pace because of that ballast he's carrying on the Huracan, what he does have is a very consistent racing speed tonight, and it's just helping him stay in the event, keeping him in the fights. As it stands, it doesn't look as if he's going to get a podium, but I think if he finishes in the top 5, he would be very, very pleased with that. Now, where's Steve Hall in relation to... Oh, as Packham closes up on the brakes there at chicane. Where's Steve Hall in relation to Mark Laszlo? Mark Laszlo's just come out of Luffield and is on to Woodcote, so this undercut has pulled Laszlo back into contention. Looks like Hall's going to get out in front of the McLaren. Oh no! Steve Hall's got to stop and go for speeding in the pit lane. Oh, that is a disaster. As Dunn now goes very defensive in the complex. And then the fight here has just changed a little bit. They won't know that Steve has got that stop and go penalty. As Packham looks to the inside, he's over the grass, he goes through. Is he going to keep that position? Because considering he turned into a lawnmower for practically half of that overtake, I'm not quite sure. But Stuart Packham moves into fourth place with what can only be described as a very unorthodox overtake. Howard Dunn goes into the pit, so he's responding to Steve Hall. But what Dunn doesn't realise is that Steve has that penalty. That stop and go is going to effectively blow his chances of a top 4 finish. So that separates it out a little bit. Gas Monkey served his pit stop. Still 65 minutes to go, but it's a good run so far for Mr. Monkey. Dan Hatton still leading the way. He's nearly 20 seconds clear of Jeffrey Van Buren. We haven't seen a drive that dominant this season since Will Fielding back at Monza for round 1, and maybe even Will Fielding's 100-minute stamp at the race in Spa-Francorchamps, but Dan's just driving away. Jeffrey Van Buren could pit now, and in theory Dan wouldn't. As I was saying, because my headset always likes to switch itself off at random points during the case of commentary here. I was saying about Dan is that, Van Buren could pit now and do 6 or 7 laps for an undercut and he still wouldn't be able to overtake him. So Dan can drive this race at his own pace. Speaking of, Howard Dunn has emerged in front of Mark Laszlo, who's kicking up the grass. No, he hasn't. He's emerged behind Steve Hall and Mark Laszlo. So Mark Laszlo's extreme undercut has really worked out. He's got back in front into 8th place on the race circuit. They'll both now know that Steve's got that stop and go penalty. So Steve will be tumbling down potentially out of the top 10 here. But Van Buren is in the pits, so Mark Chapman now is off and up the road. Chappers had been catching Van Buren by the seams of it in the last few laps. Only a little bit, but just enough to make Van Buren think he's got to cover this off. As we move into the last few minutes of the first 60 minutes of this event. I will say this about Silverstone and GT3 cars, as Danny Felix, who's running in 5th, now pits as well. Jeffrey Van Buren's back out on track. Van Buren is quite comfortably far ahead of Steve Hall. That looks like a huge gap, actually, to be honest. I know that they were quite far in front, but I don't think the margin was that great. But maybe it's exacerbated by the way the pit stops are. Joe Warner's pitted as well, so that just leaves 4 cars with a pit stop to make. Steve has to make that stop and go penalty serve. He has to do that on this lap. If he doesn't, he will get disqualified from the race. I wanted to mention whilst we're here about Silverstone for these GT3 cars. Aero setup is actually incredibly critical around this racetrack because of the way that this circuit is built on an airfield on top of one, effectively. There's quite a lot of crosswind. There's quite a lot of different speed of wind changes around the racetrack. So for the GT3 cars, they do get very sensitive of aerodynamic changes. I'm just wondering if Davies Altenbayer might be having a troubling time because of that. Maybe the Nissan not coping as well compared to other machinery. I'm wondering whether that's the case. And the other element of GT3 racing around here is that tyre wear is deceptively difficult to manage because of a lot of corners like Stowe, like Abbey, for example. They cause a lot of lateral stress. So when Dan Hatton comes through this right-hander, the left tyres are going through a huge amount of pressure through those tyres with the Pirellis. So it's going to cause a lot of tyre wear. And I think we'll see that in the second half of the race. We'll start to see in the initial phase of the tyre wear, they'll be okay, they'll be able to deal with it. But after that, they'll start to struggle. But Dan Hatton, we've been following, still in the lead. Stuart Packham in second place. Mark Chapman is not in third place. It's actually Jeffrey Van Buren who's third. In fact, Van Buren has managed to go lengths clear of Mark Chapman. That gap's 10 seconds. Just wondering, did Van Buren or did Chapman maybe have a bit of damage or something? Because he was only 3 to 4 seconds behind at the pit stop, so now he's 10. So maybe just a peculiar slow stop for the AMR team as Dan Hatton makes his pit stop. Now, will Stuart Packham decide not to take a pit stop so that he can lead a lap? Because that is something that I would expect from Stuart. And there you go. He is doing just that. He's carried on. John saying Twitch app on the PS5. It's something to do with the PS5 and the client of Twitch with that. I've heard about this before. I know that when I've got the stream on, when I'm running it through a different browser that I'm not logged into, normally the stream plays fine, sans the adverts. So I'm not sure. There's something about the playback on PlayStation that just doesn't work properly. So it is a bit inconvenient. I do appreciate you swapping around for that. Now, just to give you this is a visual representation of the damage, ladies and gentlemen, of what a stop and go penalty does to you. That's Steve Hall in 11th place, who was fighting with Mark Chapman 3 laps earlier. Sorry, not Mark Chapman. Apologies on that one. With Stuart Packham. That gives you an idea. Now, admittedly, for Stuart, he is yet to make a pit stop, so that will change around. But that's how far, in terms of time, he's lost. He's a lap down at the minute, which is going to be difficult to recover. And with him being outside of the top 10, how far away is he from Hartle Toby? I'm going to say that gap's at least 15 seconds. For Steve, he might be a bit frustrated with himself at that one, and he'll probably want to try and recalibrate his mind a little bit more. John giving us some tactical advice there, saying that Stuart will run as long as he can so he's got better tyres for the last stint. Yeah, that makes sense to me, especially for a 2-hour race. Why not try something a little bit different compared to everybody else? He's the only driver now in the whole field yet to make a pit stop. And Tactics John has slightly got that out of sync there. Nice one, John, for that. As Stuart Packham comes into the pits. So the race leader's in the pits. Dan Hatton's going to take control of this back. And he's going to continue to lead from Jeffrey Van Buren by about 19 seconds. I think Mark Chapman had a slow pit stop. I think that's why that gap's come out a little bit more. I thought maybe Van Buren had done something electric in the pit stops. But his gap is the same as what it was to Hatton beforehand. So I don't think it's anything that Van Buren's done. I think Chappers has just had a slow stop for whatever reason. Now, where is Packham here in relation to the AMR V8? I know he's more than likely going to emerge behind the Aston. It's the question of how long he's going to be in the pits for. So there goes Chapman. He goes through. Now, the real fight that Packham is looking at is the battle between himself and Mark Laszlo, because Laszlo had done that huge undercut that we've mentioned before. It's got him back into the top 5. Chappers has gone through, of course. Where is Packham? There he is. So Packham just getting up to speed now on the exit of Copse. This is going to be very tight, but Laszlo is going to be behind. Now, of course, Packham does not have tyres up to temperature just yet. Thanks to the unique nature of the race director, we can't get on board. But Laszlo didn't take advantage of that. In fact, I think he had a slide midway through Beckett's there. So, unfortunately for Laszlo, he hasn't been able to undercut Packham, but he is 11 seconds in front of Howard Dunn. I've got to say, for Howard, this is a really strong drive. You know, he's been a little bit outfoxed with the strategy, admittedly, but that aside, I think he's done a great job. Like, really positive drive after a couple of weeks out. I think for Howard, this is something that he can look to try and build upon as the season goes on. You know, his best result in the championship so far was 6th place. I think it was back at round number 5 for the 2-hour race at Spa. So, you know, for Howard here, he's on to match his best results in the championship as far as this season goes. He has had a bunch of 4th places previously, but can he improve on that as the season goes along? I think he's done good. I think he's acquitted himself really well to the championship as Howard. He's been a nice addition since he joined, and the South African just doing a solid job. That's exactly what he needs to do at this point of the season, now that he's back and going. John saying, can't see Laszlo being able to run to the end without really backing off to save fuel. I mentioned this before. I was wondering that whether his fuel map has turned, when he's going to have to turn it down, whether he's going to have to lift and coast, or if he does have to make another pit stop, he's going to fall out of the top 10. That is a really big question for where Mark ends up here. But looking at it at the minute, I'm just focusing. He's 1 second behind Stuart Packham, and he's about, I think he's 11 seconds or so clear of Howard Dunn at the minute, from what it was saying on the pit stop timer. Yeah, there we go. The Delta tracker there going up to 12 seconds almost if you round it up. The question becomes, when does Mark Laszlo decide, I'm not going to get 4th place? Should I start saving fuel now? Because I think it's probably easier for a driver to start saving fuel now and put it onto a slower fuel map and lose about a second a lap now, just to save a little bit of extra litres in the tank for the end when he's really starting to struggle. But that is just a theory. Of course, none of that is correct. None of that is actually what will happen. It's just a theory that we're putting out into the open. Oh, Jacob Byford having a huge slide through the turn 2. Gathers that all up. Harl Toby, he's 15 seconds behind Danny Felix, so he is coming after the British driver in the 985. Still got a ways to go. We've got 52 minutes on the clock. What I'm trying to do is, there we go. I'm trying to cut towards Ben Spiro, who, after his shenanigans at turn 1, which he's not very pleased about, he has, slowly but surely, worked his way past a couple of cars, and now he's in 15th. Now for Bent, he's had a couple of unfortunate results this season, so this won't be one of those that can count towards his drop score, but it is double points, and he is going to be gaining points on Will Fielden and Jordan Harding. And that's pretty important for him, because that can help him improve from 7th in the driver's standings to a top 5. It's just a shame what happened at turn 1's kind of ruined his race, really, for a top 10 result. After Liam Watkinson, if he manages to get past the Porsche, he'll have Jacob Byford about 30 seconds up the road. Now, if Liam is lapping the second slower, then Ben Spiro, as Liam goes off the exit of Copse and almost into the grandstand. That's very close, that closing speed from the Ferrari. If he tries to close up by a second and a bit of lap on Byford, he might still get 13th place, which isn't the reward he deserves after the race he's had. That's looking like the best opportunity for him at the present moment. Liam doing a great job at the minute. 13th place, 50 minutes to go. Under a bit of pressure. We'll see what he's made of as we go through the right-hander at Club. Up towards turn 1 they go again. A flick of the right-hander. Then it's Watkinson in front going through the left. And down through the gears. Into the right-hander. Liam's drifted out wide. This is the chance that Biro was looking for. He's been compromised through the right and then into the left. And Biro's going to get the switchback done. And I don't think Liam is going to fight this too hard. He's almost off the road. He was off the road momentarily, but Liam has been overtaken by Bentz. And that's another position for the Hungarian. Runs very deep at Brooklands and gave Watkinson a chance there, to be honest. He's still looking as Watkinson, but Biro's just going to shut that door on Liam. And Bentz Biro has now consolidated 14th place. And he's 25 seconds behind the Audi R8. They both have lap traffic, well, rather, they're about to be lapped by Steve Hall, so they're going to be getting the blue flags. Hall gets past one of them, but Biro doesn't let him go. I think Biro actually might be thinking in his brain, I'll let him overtake me after Maggots and Beckett's just to get a little bit of an advantage over the Ferrari. Don't have to slow down too much on the straight. There we go, a little bit of partial throttle. He'll put it back on, and there we go. He'll get the slipstream from Steve as well, and that's worked out rather nicely for Bent. So he's in 14th. Let's see. Let's take a little recast of that later on and see how the drivers are doing and how much time Bent can take out of Byford Rue in 13th position. Matt Phillips is doing a solid job in 12th place. He's been on his own for basically all the race now, to be honest. I don't think Matt himself remembers the last time he saw another car that was on the same lap as him. This is more valuable information for the Canadian, just to help support him. Now, back to a resumption of the fight that we had in the first stint between Danny Felix and Davy Zoutenbayer. These two, in the first stint, you might remember, were very close together, and Davy was having a few slides all over the place, and Danny couldn't find a way through. Well, after the pit stops, we're in the same boat again, as Felix runs a little bit deep there through Maggots. Really nice line that from Danny, and Zoutenbayer knows it. He's trying to break the slipstream on the McLaren, but I think that Nissan has got just enough in the straights to be able to defend from the McLaren behind. On board with Danny. Who's looking very strong in the corners. The way that car rotates is very strong in the chicanes, especially. But it's the straights where Zoutenbayer is just doing a good enough job, but that's a little bit wide at turn 1, and Felix is going to have to be brave. He tried, but Zoutenbayer came right back across on him. It's a little bit deep from the Nissan. That was that really for that fight. Felix trying to find a way past with 3/4 of an hour remaining. And Danny really trying to force the issue here. Since his pit stop, Howard Dunn lap times have started to fall away a little. I just wonder if his pressures at the second stop haven't been quite right. These two in the 203s at the minute, so he's quicker than the cars that are battling on screen at the minute. Here we go again. In the driver's helmet. Ooh, that was a bit of an awkward line for Felix through the left-hander to start off this complex of corners. Now Zoutenbayer's offline here. This is critical now. Danny's got to get a good exit and have forward momentum to get past the Nissan. He's in the slipstream, but just doesn't have the momentum coming off the corner, and by the time the slipstream comes into effect, it's too late. Got a yellow flag for Gas Monkey, who's just had a little spin further up the road. Nothing too major, he's got going again. Into the next chicane we go. Zaltenbayer is really struggling with that corner. That lefty just can't get the car turned in whatsoever. There's a lot of low grip understeer going on, and that's being induced by the camber off the side of that corner there. But Zaltenbayer defending again at that left-hander. He runs deep into the next corner. Danny's just trying to force him onto different lines, but right now seemingly just not going his way at the minute. That was a really nice exit from Danny to just... Sorry, from Davey to say. I think we've got Danny and Davey. It was a really nice exit from Davey, and it just pulls him away from the 985 McLaren, so he can get through it. Now, Mark Laszlo is back in the pits. Well, we were debating whether he'd be able to make it to the end. That's your answer, no. He can't. And that is going to drop Mark right out of the picture. To do a two-stop in this race, I wonder what has led him to make that decision. I've not seen a two-stop strategy, a conventional one, with an ACC Race Nation before. I've seen two-stoppers happen because of damage and all that, but not through a conventional means. So Mark Laszlo in the pits is going to drop behind Steve Hall, I think, and maybe even Dennis Penders. He is moving now. So Laszlo, I think, is going to get out in front of Dennis Penders, but he'll be behind Steve Hall. So this fight now for 6th place. Danny Felix trying to get into 6th place. Wow. What a turn up that would be. This is where, though, the Nissan struggles. We know where the Nissan is strong, and we know where the Nissan isn't. And it's these next couple of corners now, but Danny's line coming out of the right-hander at club was just not good enough. He's going to try again. He's got to be closer here because Davey can just move to the right-hand side, which means that Danny will try and look to the outside line. He's braked a little bit later. Davey can just open the steering, and a little slide from the McLaren puts him on the back foot. Gas Monkey's still there. That's a drive-through for Joe Warner. I did say track limits might be a problem. Oh, Gas Monkey. Oh, just that was a little bit awkward for Gas. I think they'll get out of the way now. But that's just put a little bit of a blocker on that fight for the time being. I think Danny will be a little bit frustrated that he's lost a little bit of time from that little escapade from Gas Monkey. But never mind, these things do happen. Sometimes traffic is the big factor when drivers are fighting over position, especially in the GT3s. But you know, we talked a few weeks ago about Danny getting that 8th place, you know, which was his best result effectively since season 10. And here we are, you know, 2 weeks on from the Red Bull Ring, and he's looking at his best result. Again, still the best result he's had since season 10, but Danny has not had any other result that's been remotely near that 5th place back in season 10 for the season finale, and that was a big race of attrition that day. But Felix has done an excellent job so far, and if he could get up to 6th, it really would be the crowning glory on that. But Davey is doing an outstanding job in front of him. He's doing an absolutely brilliant job. He knows where his car is strong, and he's using that to good effect. And he's just about got a margin every time we come to this section of the racetrack, onto the Hamilton Straight. Wow, that's big commitment through there from Felix. Zaltenbayer knows it. He's trying to move the car along just to block the McLaren. And if Danny wants to find a way through, no! And there he goes. He was pushing hard. He couldn't find a way through. He's managed to gather that up actually quite well. He's pointed the car in a straight line. He's lost... It looks to be he's lost about 6 seconds from that spin. So that is a shame for Danny. He was trying so hard. 2 drive-throughs get cleared in one go then. He was trying so hard to get past Davey, but he just lit the tyres up and that was it. But that's going to give Hartle-Toby a sniff at a potential top 6 finish. He'll be looking at that gap thinking that's possible. Hartle-Toby, of course, having that incident early on in the race, which he'll still be kicking himself about. But it'd be a really strong recovery drive if he could find his way back up into the top 6. So this is a solid effort from him. Mark Laszlo now has the freshest tyres of anybody in the field, and they will be absolutely lit up in a perfect way for him. Let's just have a look at the gap as Steve Hall crosses the line. It was 1.5, it's 1.6, so Steve Hall able to respond to Mark there. Now I'm saying that Mark will have the freshest tyres. We don't actually know if he's put a new fresh set of boots on at all. We are just assuming that is the case. But if he has, then he'll be in a really much better position as Liam Watkinson picks up a stop-go for speeding in the pit lane. And he was just a little bit too eager to get out of there. So that's going to give Gas Monkey's going to be up to 15th place. Really good drive for the number 83. Has had the half spin and a few things, but really solid today. Nice driving that from, and I will also give credit to Gas Monkey. They've got a really nice livery. I actually quite like the simplicity of the different greys with the green interstripe going on. It's a nice livery, that. And I think for Gas Monkey, because they've only done the one race, which was last week at Misano, where there was a few problems. But you know, this is going to be their first. As it stands, first classified finish for them. Well, that's a big step forward for them in the journey that they're going to be on with ACC Race Nation. It's a big step forward. So this is quite a landmark drive for Gas, who is running in 15th place. Does have Danny Felix behind, and they'll be getting the blue flags. But they're still learning, they're still getting used to league racing. And that's, again, I've said it before, I'll continue to say it, no matter how long I'm commentating for. It's all about development, it's all about getting used to the car, it's all about getting used to the game, and with time and improvements, it will come. Better results will come along from that. And we remember we used to talk about, you know, Byford Rue or Liam Watkinson or Joe Warner being miles behind in terms of raw pace. Admittedly, Joe's struggled with that car this season, but he's not a slow driver. You know, he's come on leaps and bounds. If you'd have put him in that car when he first entered the championship, he probably would have left. But he's able to deal with it. He's in the pits, but he can deal with it. Up back at the front, driving away at a canter, the stallion that is the Mustang. Not really having any issues whatsoever. I think that gap was just gone out to 28 seconds then. I mean, this is a warning shot to everybody, isn't it, realistically? If Dan Hatton doesn't get on the podium in a race, he'll bounce back the week later and he will strike in a very effective manner. Let's look at that gap. 28 seconds effectively, as near as makes no difference. Mark Chapman is catching Van Buren. When that pit stop happened earlier on, it was 10 seconds. It's now 6. So it's come down 4 seconds in the space of half an hour. That rate of progress will put them 2 seconds behind come the end of the 2-hour race here. So don't rule out anything happening between those two at the end. Stuart Packham has found himself up into 4th position. So that will give him 54 points from this race. Dan Hatton will get 32. So that'll give Dan Hatton a 1-point lead in the drivers' standings going into the second of the season breaks that we have. Of course, we've got a 15 race calendar. at Race Nation, so the drivers will have a week break next week, and that's Gas Monkey picking up now a drive-through penalty for track limits. Not as bad as a stop go, but I did say before, track limits are a problem around here. And Gas Monkey on the first race has fallen foul of that, so they just need to remember to go and serve that penalty. I wouldn't want them getting disqualified because they didn't serve it. But as I was saying, going into the season break next week, there won't be any action on the 29th of April, but we will be back on the 6th of May at Suzuka for round 11. Round 12, we'll be heading off to Bathurst. There'll be a lot. Oh, Packham spun! That was such a rare mistake, it switched my headset off. Stuart Packham spinning at Luffield. That's not something you see very often. I wonder if he was thinking about biscuits or something as he went round that corner, because that was just, it almost looked as if he just dropped the ball really with that. It wasn't it was such a slow spin for Stuart, but he's fortunate really, because he's not in a fight for the podium, but he's not under pressure from Howard Dunn either. So for Stuart at least, it's a bit of an innocuous spin. He can just carry on really, no drama for him. Davy Zattenbyer is in 6th position. He's driven so well. That car does not look easy to drive, and I think that what he's benefited from is that because he's had Felix behind him, he's just been defending all the way through the race. And speaking of Felix, he is being caught by Hartle Toby. Danny, since he made that mistake, has started to just lose the rhythm that he had before that was going so well for him, as Joe Warner decides to just help out with some edge trimming there. But he's lost that rhythm that he had, that he was so quick with before. And Hartle Toby can smell blood. And speaking of smelling blood, Mark Laszlo's right there. Let's get on board with this. As Byford Rue gets back. Oh, that was a bit of an awkward one with Van Buren. I think Van Buren kind of misjudged that almost a little bit there, but thankfully there was no real harm done. On board with Steve Hall, who's recovering from that stop-go penalty earlier. He's done well to get back to 9th actually. But Laszlo on better tyres. He's got the race fuel he needs to the end of the race. He doesn't have to worry about that. Into the right-hander we go. Laszlo just looking like he's got a really good car under his belt. He tries to brake a little bit later. But Ferrari was wise to that. I don't know the bonnet camera, it just doesn't work for us. Back into the interior camera. Of course, GT3 cars, they don't come with the luxury of glove boxes. Oh, that's a little bit wide. Joe Warner's having some more struggles out there. That was a little bit wide from Steve. That's just giving a little bit of hope for Laszlo to try and find a way past. It's a nice line though for the Ferrari through Copse. That's a lot better than the McLaren we were on board with. I know that it says on the left hand side that Hall is behind Laszlo. I can confirm that's not the case. Dan Hatton is lapping about a second quicker than everybody at the minute. Never seen a driver just come so alive with a new car. Normally doesn't happen. Very few drivers who can just switch into a new car and become immediately in sync with a GT3 machine, but Hatton has done that this season. He's turned himself into A drive. Oh, I stop that point as Laszlo goes right under the rear diffuser of Hall there. But for Dan, he wasn't a driver. I don't think anybody marked him down as a championship contender this season. That's not to be harsh. He hadn't won a race until this season. But he's gone from being, a potential race winner to being a potential champion protagonist. That's a big leap forward to go from podiums in your first season to fighting for the championship. That's a big step forward for the number 55. I wonder if Hartle Toby is thinking that as well, in terms of he's gone from the Ford to the Audi, and their fortunes have swapped a little bit, I think. Now, there's still no movement for Laszlo. And credit to Danny Felix, he's stemmed that gap to Hartle Toby. So that's not changed in the last few laps. He's actually took a little bit of time out of Davy Zambire again. But Laszlo trying to find his way past this Ferrari. We'll just quickly go back to the garage. The timing tower still saying this is the closest fight on track. This is the one that we rely on more than any of the others. Driver's eye view with Laszlo, a little bit too much curb taken. That's going to give Hall another opportunity to extend the gap. Less than a quarter of the race to go now for the drivers. I know that for John, who's watching at the minute, I know that he's probably more delighted that he's not racing tonight because he had an experience, shall we call it, at the 12 Hours of Silverstone that he did a while ago. In fact, John made the suggestion of wondering whether Laszlo had actually forgotten it was a 2-hour race. That's why he'd made a pit stop earlier. Maybe, but I don't know. He's got a chance here, though. As Hall defends heavily into the left-hander at the loop. Little snap of oversteer for the McLaren. Just loses a couple of yards that would help him in that fight to try and get past the Ferrari. Really closes up on the brakes. Dan Hatton under the 2-minute barrier at this point in the race. I mean, that is phenomenal work. Absolutely phenomenal work from the race leader. Ooh, that's a little bit too quick from Laszlo. A little too fast through there. That would have been a huge sigh of relief inside the cockpit of that car as he drifted back onto the racing line. I thought for a moment that car was going off the road, because if it had done, he'd have been spinning around, which Kylie Minogue would have been proud of. Now, Felix is still doing a solid job, but after stemming the gap to Toby, that's just come down under 2 seconds. And the problem is he's got Dan Hatton behind him, who's going to lap him. I mean, look at that. Dan Hatton has lapped most of the field. It's just showing you that it's just unbelievable dominance. He's 33 seconds in front of Jeffrey Van Buren, who's on his way to that first podium since last season. He'll be chuffed with that, I'm sure. Chapman hasn't got any closer to Van Buren since we last spoke. It's remained and hovered at around the 6-second gap. You can see the Ferrari in the distance, but it's not really getting any closer to him. Packham's still running in 4th after he thought about chocolate biscuits for a moment. He had that half spin. Howard Dunn running in 5th place. Really great driver, Howard. This is a return to form for the AMR V8. Oh, hello. Hello. I was just about to say this is very close. Hartle Toby and Danny Felix. Here we go. Toby's not going to get through at that point of the racetrack. There's only one car through there at a time. But he's got the bit between his teeth. It's all about getting the line right through there, and a little wobble mid-corner for the McLaren. It's just going to leave him vulnerable going down the straight towards Stowe. We build up to 150 miles an hour as we shift into 6. To the outside line goes the Audi, and is he going to try and go around the outside? Can he pull it off? No, he can't. He has a half spin, but somehow he stays in front of Danny Felix. Did they have contact mid-corner? It looked like they did. Wow. Well, I called it mid-corner. I thought he was going to spin around. That's why I said no. But Hartle Toby, well held, sir. We'll take a replay on that. We'll have a little look in a minute. Good choice, good selection, that, John, I have to say in the comments there. I do approve. I don't have any. I've still got about 450 million Easter eggs, though, for some reason. I am a grown man, and for some reason I still have billions of Easter eggs. I don't know why I have every single year. I'm trying to run a half marathon at the minute, and the eggs are slowing me down. But that aside, we'll wait for Hartle Toby to ping on this lap so that we can have a look at that replay as Felix runs a little bit deep. Joe Warner has cleared his drive-through. And there's a couple of mistakes coming from Felix now. So still a great drive this for Danny, but I think he's just got to try and reset his mind a little bit. Let's have a look at that overtake again. So we'll go to the 208. And then we'll have to... Apologies for everybody as we go through this. There's no actual easy way of doing it. Even if I had a keyboard, there's no actual keyboard shortcut to skip on laps. It is inherently frustrating. So that was where this all started to get set up. So let's just have a little look at this. That's a cracking camera. Let's have a look at that. So through the first corner at turn 1, Toby couldn't really do much through this next sequence of corners. It was all about momentum. As the drone will start to move into the wrong direction there. And then he got the right line. So we go towards out of Chapel and go towards the Hanger Straight, which we're on now. Nice slipstream from the car in front. Hartle goes to the outside and goes, yeah, I'm going to try it around the outside. Comes across, and Felix actually hits him. And do you know what? I think Danny, credit to him, I think Danny slows down here. Let's just go back 5 seconds. I think Danny slows down for him here after he nudges him. And he does. He braked at just the right time to let Hartle Toby go back through. So well done to Hartle Toby, because he had that move actually completed as well. And then Danny ran into the back of him. So that was really good car control for Hartle and fair sportsmanship from the McLaren, who is 3 seconds behind now. What Danny has to do here is not go into free fall, because that's Bence Biro, who's got a drive through for track limits. He was only 14 seconds behind Byford Rue. I think he probably would have caught him. Track limits catching out the Hungarian, unfortunately. That is a shame, because he's outside of that issue on the first lap. He's driven really well tonight. Lap times have been quite competitive as well, which makes you think, again, what could have been. Just a reminder, we have lost 2 drivers who started this race. That we say lost, we've not lost them permanently, they've just retired. We have, of course, Mikey Keaton was the first one to retire at about the half-hour mark. And then we lost Ross Harris for reasons unbeknownst to us, actually. Ross just completely disappeared off the timing tower after about 45 minutes. Those are the 2 retirements that we've had from the race. Just to give you an update on the football scores, it's Bournemouth 1, Leeds 1, and Manchester City are still leading 1-0 against Burnley. So a little bit of a squeaky time for Manchester City supporters, who are only currently 1-0 up, and what is a pivotal game for the blue half of Manchester. But yeah, that's for those that are watching who are interested. But Dan Hatton's still leading the way. He's about to put a lap on Davy Zoutenbayer. Can you believe this? He's only going to be 4 cars left in the field that he hasn't lapped. I don't think he'll get to Howard Dunn as quick as Dan Hatton is. I think Howard's clear for this. I think he's going to be going through. Where is he now? As Dan Hatton comes onto the mini straight between Woodcote and Copse, and now Dunn is going onto the Hanger straight. I think Dunn will be fine with less than 20 minutes to go. Chapman's got the gap down since we last talked. I wonder if Van Buren's had a little mistake again somewhere. I said before that Chapman had took 4 seconds out of him, but what I didn't mention was that Van Buren had made a mistake that dropped the gap from 10 seconds to 8 seconds, and then it went from 8 to 6, and now it's gone from 6 to 4. And I wonder if Van Buren, he hasn't had any traffic to deal with. I wonder if he's just had a little slide off the road somewhere, and he's just gathered it all back together. Gap now almost 4 seconds, so Chapman can just get on board with Chapman actually, just so you can see this. He can see the Ferrari. He's only there. That'll be a little. That's almost like dangling the carrot, isn't it? Realistically, it's effectively giving him a little bit of hope and opportunity. And the other thing as well for Chapman is that he doesn't have to think about Stuart Packham in this race. He is absolutely miles clear of the Lamborghini. Less than 4 seconds. Now is Van Buren starting to have difficulties with the tyres, or is it just the nature of this race where everything is coming back together again? Because it does do that in this championship. We've seen it before, even in the 1 hour races, where we have periods where the on-track action is a little bit quieter compared to the opening frenetic elements of the race, and then it all comes back together. Is this going to happen again? Are we going to see Hartle Toby catch Davy Zoutenbayer? That gap is 6.1 seconds. That's come down with 17 minutes to go. Let's just see what the lap times are. Davy Zoutenbayer with a 2-minute 3.4, and Hartle Toby with a 2-minute 1.2, so 2 seconds taken out of the Nissan. Now, if my mathematics is correct, as a big track marker gets obliterated by the Audi. If my mathematics are correct here, we've got, I reckon, about 8 laps to go, depending on where Dan Hatton is on circuit. And if Hartle is catching Davy by 2 seconds a lap, we could have a 4, maybe 5 lap shootout between those two for 6th place. Packham's still in 4th place. Gas Monkey still circulating. He's right behind Bence Biro, actually, who's got to serve that drive-through now. So Gas Monkey is looking like he could finish even 13th, because Byford Roo's right there. Byford Roo's gone off since we've been talking, and Bence goes past him. There's a nice little move that. Oh, I thought for a moment Byford Roo was going to try and overtake. That wasn't going to work. And Bence is going to get disqualified here, I think. He's missed the pit lane. And sadly, we've lost Bence Biro. And that is, I'm not sure why that's happened, really. I know why it's happened, but I don't know why he's not served it, because he's just done an hour and 45 minutes and he's not served his penalty, and that means he's not going to get any points. What a disaster, actually, is the appropriate word. So, sadly, we lose Bence from the race, but what that does is promote a fight here between Byford Rue for 13th and Gas Monkey looking to be the attacker. I said before that Gas Monkey had put in a solid performance, and this is the culmination of it here. He's right with Byford Rue. Well, he was with Byford Rue until he made that mistake at the left-hander. He overshot the corner and then ran wide at Club. So we'll have to cut back to that. But Gas Monkey really in the mix. And Chapman's down to 2 seconds. Now, is Van Buren making mistakes that we don't see? Or is he saving fuel? That's the other question. There could be something else going on. But that is a significant deficit that he's lost in the last few laps. Mark Chapman's there. They're in the same shot together. Just looking, Danny Felix, 7 seconds clear of Steve Hall. 5.5 behind Hartletoby. Hartletoby 5 seconds behind Davy Zoutenbayer. Let's look at the time as Van Buren goes across the split beam. 37 seconds. And Chappers is 1.6. Hold on to your seatbelts, everyone. We've got a fight on our hands here. Not for Dan Hatton. He's fighting against sleep at this point. But Van Buren and Mark Chapman is going to become prime box office viewing. Now what... and Dennis Pender's moved right out of the way. And that's the gap you can see on board. We'll give you... This is the view that Chappers has. This is what he'll be racing in. Oh, that was a big clamp of the curb on the inside there. That is not what you need in this scenario. .4 with 12 minutes and 50 seconds remaining in the session. Is it all going to turn on its head in these last few minutes? We'll have to find out. Now, to stop myself just then, I turned my headset off and on again so it doesn't do it between now and the end of the broadcast. So I'm just jumping the gun a little bit there. But 1.4 seconds is the gap between Van Buren and Mark Chapman. Liam Watkinson's in 15th position. Davy's out and by. Hartletoby's made a mistake. So Davy looking like he's more secure in that 6th place finish. And for Davy... it's just it's another good drive. Again, it's another good drive. He might have qualified quite far outside of the top 10, but just seems to know what he's doing as Joe Warner picks up another drive through for track limits. It's been a tough event for Joe. He's actually gone off Maggots and Beckett's, unfortunately. But this has been a really good drive for Davey. And I think now, with less than 12 minutes to go, he will be hard-pressed under normal race circumstances to be caught by Hartletoby, I think, at this point. It's not over, of course. It never is. A spin could change all that. Mark Laszlo has climbed up to the back of Steve Hall again. We'll have to find out why Mark Laszlo made a second pit stop. The theory is going that John believes he thought it was a 1 hour race. That's why he made a second pit stop. My belief is that he didn't fuel properly. That's what I'm going to think, potentially. John, what a wonderful commentator Murray Walker was. And to this day, I say the only person who ever comes near to Murray Walker's style and passion for motor racing is Ben Edwards. Still think he's the only other top quality commentator That's not to say all the others are rubbish. They're not. They're great, but I just think in terms of excitement, Ben Edwards is the only other person who can capture it in a lightning in a bottle moment like Murray could. But right now, catching is one thing and passing is quite another. And Danny Felix must have been thinking earlier on, that's my 7th place disappearing. Well, within touching distance. Absolutely not over yet. Byford Rubat's put a lap on his mate in the form of Joe Warner. Packham's still circulating, but he's just been on his own. I think for Packham as well, the other important thing is in the last 10 minutes is just not to get bored. Because I know that Stewart might get bored actually, and he might want to jump onto Le Mans Ultimate at some point. Maybe he'll do that halfway through the race. But for Stewart, in any respect, he is a really good driver. He knows what he's got to do to bring the car home. He's comfortably clear of Howard Dunn. It's a really solid drive. Gas Monkey's back in the pits. I wonder if he's run out of fuel. That's a surprise. I wasn't expecting Gas Monkey to go back into the pits. It's not a conventional pit stop unless he's gone off the road somewhere. Joe Warner's cleared his drive through. I don't think Gas Monkey's under any threat of losing 14th. I think, yeah, Liam Watkinson was a lap behind him, so there's nothing to worry about that. And Gas gets back out, so no pressure there. So Laszlo and Steve Hall, one close fight. Mark Chapman, that gap's not a couple of seconds anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, Gas Monkey's just got a stop and go penalty for speeding in the pit lane. When it rains, it pours. But Van Buren in second place, and Gas Monkey does a good job to get out of the way. So the Aston now really starting to apply pressure to the Dutchman. And can Chappers do it for the home fans and get a British driver and a British car onto the second place of the podium? It's a nice comment, that, John. It's a nice line, that, from Chapman. And Buren's having to go defensive into the corner. He's put him on the wrong line, has Chappers. 7.5 minutes to go. It's a little bit of a wobble out of the corner, that, for Chapman. He didn't need that. That's probably affected him going towards Abbey Corner. On board once again with the Aston. Don't forget Mark Laszlo and Steve Hall are still together, and now we've got another back marker to deal with in the form of Watkinson. Always had a spin, and they both had to react to that. And Van Buren and Chappers actually equally delayed, really, in that, to be honest with you. So status quo resumes, and they won't, I don't believe they're going to catch anybody between now and the end of the race. So it's a fight between the two. Laszlo is still behind Steve Hall. I can see that on the track map, as I should say, as we go on to the 56th lap of the race. 56 laps of Silverstone so far, and Dan Hatton has led practically every single one, bar from when he went in the pits, and Packham led for a lap or two. Six minutes and 12 seconds remaining, and the tide just being stemmed a little by the Dutchman. Third gear into the right-hander, bounces over the curbs on the exit. Got to be careful with the curbs around Silverstone. GT3 cars don't really like them. It can unsettle the cars, to be fair. I wonder, the other thing I'm just wondering about with Van Buren, he has lost a little bit of time, is I wonder if his brakes and temperatures are throwing him out a little bit. There's one problem that the GT3 cars have around this racetrack, is that because of the way there's lifting and coasting, and the way that the drivers have to, you know, in fights they run in the slipstream, I wonder if his braking temps are a little bit all over this place. Because that is another factor, and another big feature in this game, is that it can cause issues. Chapman not yet through. Can't find a way past. Laszlo very close to the rear spoiler there. Steve Hall. Hartle-Toby's got the gap down to 4 seconds to Davies Autenbayer. I thought that race was done for 6th place, but might yet be a final twist in the tail as Laszlo closes up to the rear spoiler of Steve. I said that Dan Hatton wouldn't catch Howard Dunn, but can I just say that they're both on that hanger straight together. It's amazing how much speed that Dan has in this race. I wonder if he'll get to lap 60. Well, that would be impressive. That's a little bit wide from Steve, but then the lag spike separates them back out, so actually no real time lost for the Ferrari. Steve typically taking a slightly slower entry into Maggots, and that's wide from Laszlo, and that's just going to put him completely on the wrong line, and he won't have an opportunity to go through down the hanger straight, so he's going to have to wait for a little bit longer. Felix is still there. Hartle-Toby now 3.4 seconds behind Davies Autenbayer. It must be so frustrating for Hartle, because we all know how fast he is, but for whatever reason that Audi just is completely inconsistent. Just seems to bounce all over the shop whenever it doesn't want to. We have lost another driver whilst I've been chatting. We haven't, we've lost Ben Spiro, that's what it is. But down to the outside, Chapman again forcing the issue on Van Buren in front of us. And that line's just a little bit wrong, and that's going to put him wide. And that'll give him a track limits violation. Doesn't need any more of those. You can only get so many before the race director comes out and gives you a drive-through or a stop-and-go penalty. As Hatton starts his 58th lap of the race, so he will get to 60. And they've both got Joe Warner in front of them in this fight. So where will Joe move past? Will he do it on? He will do it on the Wellington Straight. I hope. He has got the blue flags flying. There he goes. He gets right out of the way. But Van Buren is soaking up the pressure here. The Dutchman doing a good job. He's on track for that first podium in season 12. Long overdue, it has to be said. Van Buren doing a really, really strong drive tonight. But he's got to just keep going. 2 more laps remaining, the penultimate lap of the race. I believe it's the penultimate lap of the race. Chap is again looking to the inside, just throwing shapes at Van Buren. To the right-hander we go through Maggots and Beckett's, and then onto Chapel, and then into the hanger straight. Nice line that from the Aston Martin. I think he's going to have to defend Van Buren here, because the Aston Martin looks like he's closing. He's there, you know, he could lunge. Van Buren kind of moved to the middle of the road to just deter any late attack from the Aston. He won't throw it up the inside there. He's just putting the car there to try and throw him off. And Davies Autenbayer has been overtaken by Hartle-Toby, but we haven't seen it. Hartle-Toby's gone through. So the Audi does get up to 6th place. Big bounce over the curbs for Autenbayer. It's almost as if he's lost a heap of time. I'm just looking at his fuel map, actually. Davies looks like his fuel map's gone right down. I wonder if that's why he's losing so much time. Tripping over my own words. You can tell it's been a 2-hour race. But we've got 1 minute to go. Dan Hatton on the final lap. He's going to take another race win. It'll be his 5th of the season. It's an incredible record, that, when you think about it. He's done 8 races this season. He's going to have won 5 of them. Laszlo is still right there with Steve. He's got 1 more lap to try and find a way past the Ferrari. Steve's in the pits. Well, that is another moment in this race that I wasn't expecting, and I don't think Mark Laszlo was either. So Mark Laszlo will finish 9th. We'll have to find out from Steve Hall why he's gone into the pits at the end of the race. Yeah, brake set 2. Jordan has told me quite a few points about the different brake sets and how they work, John, but it's good info for everybody. So, 2 fights completed. It just leaves these two, with Chappers and Van Buren going hammer and tong for this second place. And this is the big final opportunity for Chapman to find a way through, I think. Van Buren doesn't have to defend into Stowe. That's a tighter line from the Aston Martin. And he's going to try and look his Chapman to the outside, but that's a little bit wide. Is he going to throw it down the inside? He's close, but he's not quite close enough. That's the penultimate heavy braking stop. The next one will be after Abbey Corner. But it all depends how good Chapman's exit is. I am conscious of Dan Hatton up front, though. I'm going to cut to Dan Hatton because he's going to round the final corner here. What a stonking drive from Dan Hatton. It's 5 wins for the season for the Mustang driver. What a performance. And a dominant race victory here at Silverstone. We cut back to the action with Van Buren and Chapman going for it for second place. Only 2 corners left for Van Buren to navigate. And I think he's there pretty much. He's just got to make sure he keeps it nice and tidy. No mistakes here. Chapman trying a late lunge into Brooklands, but I think that was coming from as far back as Milton Keynes, really. I don't think that one was quite going to pay off. But Van Buren comes around the final corner. He's just about going to hang on for his first podium of the season. Well done, Van Buren. A great drive from Jeffrey there. Mark Chapman in 3rd place. That's a good result for Chappers. Keeps him in contention for the championship. Let's not rule him out. He is the reigning champ, of course. Stuart Packham will be 4th. A lonely 4th place for Packham, to be fair, but I don't think he'll complain too much about that. That's a good set of points for him, and he'll be separated by a point between himself and Dan Hatton for the Drivers' Championship. So he's going to bring Matt Phillips along with him. He's going to get 12th place today, is Matt. I think Matt will be pleased with that. That's another good, solid result for the Canadian. Keeps up his good run of form recently in the championship. So there's Packham over the line for 4th place. Steve Hall will cross the line in 11th. We'll have to find out why he pitted. That was a bizarre moment. That was almost a bit like Heinz Harald Frentzen at the end of the 1997 Monaco Grand Prix. We still don't know why he did it to this day. But Howard Dunn is going to come around the final corner. He's going to drift round the final corner, is Howard Dunn. The South African, a great return and a best result of the season for him. He's going to end up in 5th place. Great drive from the South African. And Gas Monkey's in the pit. So technically there is nobody. I mean, technically actually it's Gas Monkey who hasn't, because he's crossed the start-finish line. Technically he needs to do a lap of the circuit. So we're all just going to sit here, I think, until... There we go. Now it cycles through. So let's just run through these provisional results. Dan Hatton, with a dominant drive, wins the race by 44 seconds. That's a rate of 3/4 a second per lap over everybody else. That's how quick he was today. Mark Chapman 3rd after a great battle with Jeffrey Van Buren for 2nd, but the Dutchman getting that result on the 2nd step of the podium. Stuart Packham is 4th in the Lamborghini, a solitary 4th in the end for him, with Howard Dunn in 5th. Hartle Toby, great recovery from him to finish in 6th, with Davies out on Bayer, a sterling effort to finish 7th. Danny Felix, he'll be happy with that. It's a good result, but I've said it before, I think Danny's more than capable of getting a top 6 result if he can keep that type of form up. He's in 8th place with Mark Laszlo in 9th. Good drive from Mark. We'll have to find out why he pitted twice, though. And Dennis Penders quietly secures a top 10 result. Steve Hall pitted at the end. We'll find out what happened there for the next event in 11th place. Matt Phillips was 12th with Jacob Byford-Rue in 13th. Liam Watkinson 14th. Gas Monkey ended up in the pits, but had a really good drive today. They were 15th. Joe Warner had some struggles in 16th place. The retirements we had were Ross Harris and Mikey Keating, and Bence Biro was disqualified from the session for not serving his drive-through penalty. Bye for Drew saying he finished with fumes in the fuel tank. Yeah, definitely. I can imagine. But well done, Jacob. You got to the end without having to make another one for the fuel strategy. Thanks, Danny. Nice comments there. Well done today. Good drive from yourself. That's what we like to see. It's just improvements for everybody across the board. And one other thing I want to say before we finish up for this evening, thank you everybody for watching, of course. We are going to be on a break, just a reminder, next week, so no racing action on the 29th of April, but then we'll be back for the 5 race dash to the season end. Suzuka on the 6th of May, followed by Bathurst, followed by Kyalami, followed by Laguna Seca, and then the Nordschleife 24 hours. Thankfully, we're not doing a 24-hour commentary. It's a 24-hour layout, and we will be doing 2 hours around the Nordschleife circuit. At that point, we'll know who is in actual championship contention. It's going to be feisty, it's going to be electric, and there's going to be drama between now and the 3rd of June, that last race of the season, of course, round number 15. But as I said earlier, thank you to everybody who's been watching during the stream. Really great to have you with me. I will be uploading this, but of course there's been a bit of an issue between Twitch and YouTube recently, so it might take a little bit of time because of the length of the stream. But in any case, I've been Jack Millington. Thank you very much for watching, and wherever it might be in the big wide world, have a good one, and we'll see you for round 11 at Suzuka.